Cool.
Yeah, I did comment a lot on your videos. I thought they were really, really interesting. Um, they were just much more. um, I found your stuff because I was like kind of bored with PVK's stuff. Not like it was bad. I was just kind of bored.
Yeah.
Um, and I found, I think it was the one about like Tower of Babel music and stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, this is like really, really cool. Like I love that sort of stuff. And the one about Noah
Mm.
and that kind of reading of Genesis, that was really, really cool as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Well, well, I appreciate that because those are the ones like I actually worked the hardest on. So,
yeah,
like that stuff with the Noah thing, like it took a long
yeah,
time to kind of figure that out or whatever. So,
yeah. It's tough to find people that think that way sometimes. I think in this corner.
yeah.
So it was just a very welcome surprise. So yeah, I comment a lot on things. I always wonder if that's too much or not, but yeah. I don't know. I really reached out because I liked the some of your thoughts about the fast, good, and cheap, and then your thoughts about the tents
Mm.
and the Ark of the Covenant was really interesting. Like the idea of like a wooden chest that's laid in gold but isn't
Covered in
solid
gold.
gold,
Yeah. Yeah.
like something like that. I thought that all of that sort of stuff is very interesting because it very much speaks to like kind of a Protestant America kind of idea of of building churches and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was cool. Um, one thing, have you heard of Owen Benjamin?
Uh, I think that name sounds familiar, but I don't
Oh,
know.
okay. I
So,
don't know. I thought you might know who that was. Yeah, I heard you say that you well, I heard you say that you kind of went down conspiratorial rabbit holes and stuff like that, and that's very much how I kind of found myself in this corner. Weirdly enough,
mhm.
um, it was like through Joe Rogan and some other people.
Yeah.
But anyways, I bring that guy up because I think it could actually really help, like the whole estuary thing that's going on, because like this whole estuary project people think is like new, and I've actually been through something that was very similar to what's happening now, but it just moved like a lot faster in a lot of ways, and it's was pretty successful in everything that it's done.
Yeah.
So I don't
What
know.
was
Do
it?
you have like a live estuary?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm active in my church, and so I'd say probably the closest thing to that is that we have a men's Bible study that I go to every week, and that's like a pretty like we have we'll have all sorts of people come there. It's very it's pretty raw. Like people don't have to like wherever people are at, if they're just like, I just heard about this thing called the Bible and my life's a mess. Like, I mean, there's a guy that came the other week and he's just like been struggling with relapsing in drug addiction for like 10 years or whatever. Like, and so there's not, so yeah, so most of the people that are in the group are Christians, I would say, but at, at least it's there's no like fake pretending like, oh, we're all at church, so we're all superior moral people. Like everybody's pretty honest about um, their vulnerabilities and their problems and things like that. So
Yeah.
it kind of functions at least a little bit in that way. Um, but
It's like if you have a good Bible study, I don't I don't know that you necessarily need an estuary, you know.
Yeah. I mean,
Just
I would say the estuary element that it would be better maybe to have would just be a way to get more people to be interested in it, because there's a lot of people that should say, "Oh, Bible study, I'm not interested in that." But
yeah,
but it's good for what it is. But
yeah.
what was your group experience?
Well, so we actually do have an estuary here in Kansas City. I was very surprised that there was even an estuary here when I went to the estuary hub, and turns out Jess P and he runs it, and I didn't realize. I didn't know him at the time. I didn't really get involved in the Discord or anything
Mm-hmm.
until this year, like this winter,
Yeah.
because of this stuff. It was like when Paul Vanderklay started doing the thing about what's his name? He was a YouTuber, the angry drunk guy that does like the
Oh,
movie
the
reviews.
critical drinker.
Yeah,
Critical
yeah.
drinker. Yeah.
That like got me really fired up. Like his kind of videos on that, and I started getting involved, and we started doing. Well, I guess he fired up the estuary again, so that's been really cool. It's all pretty much Christians except for one guy who's like an atheist. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not surprising, just being in the area that I'm at. It's very heavily like there's a church every 5 minutes from here.
Yeah.
So I wasn't shocked about that, but lately it's just been me, Jess, and the guy that's like an atheist, and it's almost too few people in a way to where
Mhm.
it's just like kind of talking.
Yeah.
And I feel like there needs to be at least a little more people to like,
Yeah.
I
To
don't know,
have the
it's interesting.
structure.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of antsiness in this realm right now. Everybody's like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I think Paul had a good point of like, could just kind of keep going. Like, I don't know. Part of me is like, so one thing is I'm working with Chad on a project. He's doing like well, he really started it and he's like kind of directing it. But I've been kind of the writer on this project for Peter Pan adaptation
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the people that are like, where do we go and what do we do? People need to start creating and working together with kind of this network that we've created. Like it's not, I don't know. It doesn't have to be this like, do we make a political coalition or something? It's like just kind of
Yeah.
that's kind of what I found myself is like drifting away from like PVK and kind of getting into more smaller channels that are more like niche. Like for me, you, Burn Power, some of those like more artistic minded people is kind of what I drift to. And I don't know. I also just wanted to kind of ask you about your thoughts of like what what did you or what do you want to do? I guess like what do you have any vision of like utilizing what we have to do something?
Yeah. So, did you see the talk I had with Bern? Um,
Yeah, I did.
yeah. So, I kind of started to outline his thing because I had kind of come up with this plan a little while ago, and really, I'm just doing a lot of writing to try to get everything like finalized or whatever. But
Mm,
originally I thought like, oh well, YouTube, like the YouTube thing is. I don't think I ever thought like, oh, I could like my channel could blow up and I could be like successful just for doing videos,
mm,
but I'm more or less kind of liked how like with PVK and some of the other people, it's like, oh, this isn't just like a commercialized product. It's like an authentic thing in that it's just real people, and
mm,
like I think it validates the fact that real people have just as good of ideas and sometimes maybe better ideas because um, you know everything with like the way media happened before, and I think unfortunately this still happens in like YouTube, and other social media with like the algorithms, and you get these echo chambers. But it was always like, well, let's just pick the best idea, and we're going to focus on the best idea, and we're going to put the money behind that, and then like maybe you'd have the second best idea as like a competitor. But the kind of like thinking outside the box, you could say, or just like it would, the random, totally different ways of thinking about stuff, you just won't never hear. I mean, you would hear about it when you have real conversations, like with your friends, but it's just, I think because originally it was like, oh, you only had so many channels on a TV, and so they were really intentional about like what made the cut, Whereas now anything can be on the internet, and you could like you could be entertained or even kind of get some of the longing for connection met by watching just like videos of, I don't know, just like stupid videos. But if it's like real, these people that like blog every day about just the stuff that's going on in their life, and like, but there's no real purpose in that. And so I like that PVK's channel was kind of like, it's like behind the scenes of like what pastor thinks about, like with all his time and stuff, and obviously he's not, I think he is somewhat unique. Like not every pastor is like PVK. He's really interested in like what's going on now and like the new things, and so that's kind of cool to see. But I kind of thought like maybe this will just lead to like natural connections in like real life, or like, because I had worked at a church for a while. I didn't like how like being an employee of a church, you kind of don't feel like you have the same rights as an employee of just like a regular business, because you can't say like, oh, well, I worked this amount extra, and so I need more pay, or I've been here, like stuff like that. It's just like such a terrible, uncomfortable situation, because it's like, oh, that's not a spiritual thing to ask about, but so so it's good to be like having a job that's just a job, and can be like, okay, well, I'm doing this, X and Y, more responsibility, I'm working more hours, whatever, so I need more money. And your boss be like, oh, okay, well, that's fair. And they know like, oh, if we don't give him more money, somebody else will hire him, so whereas at a church, it just gets messy with the personal relationships you have with everybody, and the spiritual aspect. So that's why I was like, I don't know, but I didn't want to stop being involved in like church ministry and stuff like that. So I thought maybe like, oh, if I just put stuff on YouTube and I'll just try to, some of it's, I kind of started with like, I'm just going to put like the ideas out here that I don't really care about. I super developed or whatever, not to say they're not like, they're not things I haven't thought of seriously, but like, so that video about like the Noah thing, where I made like the short one, the one that was like 11 minutes long, and it was just like pictures and kind of doing the whole story. So that, but I made that after I wrote this paper, basically, which is like 45 pages, and it's so long I have to like look at it again and edit it, because it's probably like I didn't, it's too big.
I read some of it, but I didn't get more.
Yeah, but I mean, but in there, it's like, well, no, I like everything I said in the little short video. I was like, okay, these are all things you can back up, and here's why. So I made the short video because it was like clickbaity, and people, I made it to be like a little bit provocative, because it's like very different from what you probably hear in Sunday school, and hoping that people would be like, oh, well, let me look into this more, and they could see, oh, well, I do, there is good reasons why it makes sense. But so but I thought like, oh well, this is just a thing. Like it's. I mean, I don't know if it's permanent, but like YouTube, you put it on YouTube and it's up there, and other people could see it. So, um, like now people like look at social media and stuff. If you're being considered for a job, and um, most of the time we talk about how that's like a bad thing, how like people have to be careful, like you don't want pictures of you like partying out there because somebody's gonna find it and they're not going to want to hire you. But I was thinking in the other way, it's kind of like, oh well, this is part of my resume. Like, here, go look at all this stuff. Like, this is what I've been doing, for the past year or whatever. You can see how it's changed, how it's improved.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm just, and I'm trying to be like committed to it, because I'm better at starting things sometimes than I am at like finishing them. And I think now I'm starting to see like if you just do stuff for a really long time, like eventually it'll pay off some more,
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to be consistent with it. But the things that really kind of like make me um, the topics or whatever that I've been consistently really interested in is kind of like the stuff that's like the crisis of like young men. I feel like because mostly because I have experienced a lot of this stuff myself. Like, it's not easy to find your like place in the world. It's not easy to find a career. It's not easy to find a spouse. It's not easy to like all the kind of stuff that we still would consider as like the American dream. Figuring
Mm-hmm.
out like how to get that is really hard now, and
Yeah.
um, and I think that I want to help like figure out new ways to make that possible. And that was some and so a couple of churches I was involved in like post high school like discipleship program, kind of like a gap year thing. And so I kind of had I thought that is a good model, like to say like, oh, before you go to college, like focus for a year or something really on getting to know your Bible and practice being an adult a little bit. Um, but those sort of things don't really at the end of it, you, in practical terms, it just sets you back a year. You're like, oh well, now. So that's kind of a problem. And some of them added like uh, college credit you could get for doing it, so that helps a little bit. But I thought uh, because I've been doing construction for a long time too, and
Mm-hmm.
now like I'm training guys and stuff, and I was like, oh, like I'm seeing even how like guys that aren't necessarily Christian or whatever, but like young guys who get into like a job in construction, it's
Mm-hmm.
like helps them become like a better man because they're like working
Yeah.
hard, they're learning how to be responsible. They're they can see their progress as like they improve and get better at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was my idea is to try to figure out a way to integrate those two things. So I plan to so I'm writing out a plan for how to do this. So eventually, maybe in a year or two or something, I want to start a real program that like people could come to and simultaneously learn how to grow in their faith and learn some trade skills that they could turn into a career or just be a useful thing. So, but I want to integrate all the stuff. I think like that a lot of the Jordan Peterson stuff and the John Vervaeke stuff, like that could help make
Yeah.
those connections. So
Yeah, but I think you're right. Like, it's one of those things where you hear it of like, young men need to have some skills and in trades and stuff like that. Like, dads used to have to fix everything in the house.
yeah,
A lot of people are like, oh, that's so not spiritual or whatever. And that's part of the problem is like actually it is in a lot of ways
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that did change my life in a lot of ways as I got a job with like real construction and it's actually very strange because like at this job I was doing like a lot of excavating. I was like listening to Paul Vanderklay like the whole time,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it was like yeah, very much like taught me to. It sounds so basic, but I am a Zoomer, so give me some slack. Like it taught me just like schedule and just like showing up and punctuality and all that sort of stuff that you're not gonna get really out there anymore unless you really seek it, you know.
Yeah.
Because I had a really tight group of friends in high school, and we've all kind of drifted into our own kind of separate ways as that's life. But it's just interesting to see like where kind of like everybody's on like a different end of the spectrum and very much like it's just funny because like me and this other kid that we're still very close, like we're definitely the most like we're still Christian, they ended up dropping it all, and it very
Hmm.
much like we're both the ones that work manual labor,
Yeah.
I mean he's now like a firefighter, but he did a lot of landscaping on the side, but that is like a big thing. And one thing that was really really cool to hear was at the Thunder Bay conference. There was I didn't go or anything, but I saw a video uh, that I can't remember what it was part of. I think it was kind of the last, like they were wrapping up, and they had one guy that had been on a randos conversation, and he had this idea for like a church ministry called the 400. And it was like a ministry around like older men mentoring younger men and revolving around like home ownership in the
Hmm.
church. And I just thought I was like, oh, that's exactly what a lot of this needs is like real embodiment out in the world instead of just
Yeah.
keeping it to ideas. And it's tough to even say that sometimes because it's just like I don't know, it can just get a stigma of, oh, that's very like you just care about material or whatever. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, it's trying to bring the two together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like so easy to talk about like materialism as being a bad thing, and then not have it turn into like a weird Gnosticism that
Yeah.
thinks like material itself is evil. And then even where it's like I always say like I really do appreciate like Jonathan Peugeot and what he's doing and stuff like that, but I think that he he works he could honestly it's like at a certain level he does similar things to what I do, and which as you're saying, if you're working in construction, similar things that what you do. He's removing small pieces of material from a larger piece of material
Yeah.
to get it to its proper state of being. When
Yeah. He
he's
does a lot of
done,
woodworking.
it's like a beautiful icon that is like purposefully designed just for like its beauty, you could say.
Mhm.
Whereas I'm doing stuff that's a lot more mundane. I work on cabinets, so I'm fixing people's cabinets, and nobody's going to stare at the cabinet and contemplate it like you would with an icon. But so we kind of have this tendency to want to say like, oh, icon is a sacred object and a cabinet is a mundane object, or it's just a common item. But um, I don't. I don't really see where that distinction actually exists from like God's point of view, because like God is, I think, very concerned with the material things in the right way, and like He wants us. Our job is supposed to be like taking care of some of that stuff, in the right way, not making
Right.
idols out of it, but um, not downplaying its importance and significance either. So I think that like there's nothing that you do that's not a spiritual action in some
Mhm.
way, you know, like
Mhm.
that. I think that's the thing, that kind of concept of like neutral time or neutral space is like, that doesn't exist. You're either doing something that's like building the kingdom of God, or it's tearing down the kingdom of God, you know,
Mhm.
in some way, you know. So, and that affects everything we do. And um, so, you know, I say, like, as I've been listening to stuff while I'm doing construction work, that becomes more and more clear. And I think
Yeah.
that I think there's just a little bit of a disconnect, because we always talk about those things in regards to like the arts,
Mhm.
like, but not also stuff on a lower level, like, you know, because if you're like if a mom's making lunch for her kids, and is like, this is, I'm just gonna slop some peanut butter on here and whatever, and like not care, or it's like, or could you take time and attention to do it well, and like, you know, put it on the plate and present it in a way that the kid's happier, like that, you know, it's you're making it more of a like spiritual thing or whatever, you know, by just by making it the best version of whatever you're doing. So
Well, we do live in such a weird world where it's like, I was reading this thing about Romans, like the highest paid job in the Roman Empire was like either a wall painter or which is like the lowest paid construction gig you could do,
mhm.
and then like concrete molders and stuff like that, and it's
Yeah.
like those were seen as arts, and like the arts and the trades have like had this weird separation now,
Hmm.
where it's like it's very common to have like the construction worker be like, oh, art's, you know, stupid or whatever. They would say much more derogatory things sometimes, but it's like, oh, it's like girly or this and that, and it's like you're literally a carpenter. Like that is, it is like an art for
Yeah.
almost more an art than Marino Abramovich or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like just like nonsense,
Hmm.
shock value or whatever. And I long term, I do hope to like fuse those worlds back together for people. It's like you don't have to. Not like I want to force the world to conform or something, but like in people's perspective, like realize what they're doing is much more than just a trade job or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I see it as like, okay, these things are always going to be with us. So it is important where, you know, it's like, um, you know, there was such a thing of like, you have to get a bachelor's degree. It's like the most important thing. And then they kept saying that for so many years. And then it's like everybody has a bachelor's degree, and having a bachelor's degree doesn't mean anything. And then it's like, we need more coders. We need more coders. And like, not say like that's, you know, obviously there's a lot of jobs in that, but there's some people who like love it and it's like natural to them, and there's other people who are just like, this is what they told me was the job that I was supposed to get, like this is the path I was supposed to take. And
Mhm.
um and when we make it always too about like a certain standard of living, um like I grew up in New England. Houses are super expensive there. I could never afford a house doing what I do there. But I live in Texas, and houses are a lot cheaper. And so, like, I have no desire to, you know, just work uh, some other type of job that would just give me a bigger house. Like having the house that I can afford, like, and doing the work that to me is meaningful, and I'm able to provide all the stuff I need, you know, for my family. Like that, like that's a really great life to me. And like, um, but we don't teach people like contentedness either, you know, because it's all consumerism and stuff. So you can always look at somebody who has more stuff, and then that's why your life's like not good enough. So I was going somewhere with that. I don't know, but yeah, I think it is that we do have to connect that stuff, like because there's no like I think what I the conclusion I came to as I've been writing some thoughts out is like the meaning crisis. Like you have a meaning crisis when you've arrived like at a place that you thought was going to give you meaning and then you didn't find it, you know? Because you have meaning when you're like pursuing a goal, you know? What if you're like I'm going to go to college and get a degree and get this job and get a house, um, as long as you can tell like you're moving you're improving along that path or you're going somewhere, you can like feel like you're being successful. But once you get all the stuff and then your life isn't like awesome all of a sudden,
Mhm.
then you have a meaning crisis. But I think that part of what is happening now more is that, and especially for like young guys, um, is it's more of like a purpose crisis because they don't even like know what the path to get on is.
Yeah, I agree. It's not. I I've also thought the same thing that like the idea of a meaning crisis is like kind of, like even the super nihilistic kid that doesn't believe in anything, that has meaning. Like that worldview
Yeah.
has meaning to them, you know? And so it really is, it's more, yeah, when I'm talking to actual guys, like that's much more what it is. It's not necessarily the meaning. The video games have plenty of meaning to them. That's why they'll
Mm-hmm.
play it for hours and hours and hours. It's not meaning, it really is like purpose. And that's one thing that I have also thought about is like I can't I can't give you purpose. I can't even talk you into seeing a purpose. It really is kind of like a by grace alone type of thing where it like comes from above. And so
Yeah.
I think the best we could do is lay like a better I don't know if that's the right word, but like lay a better foundation for it to or like laying better ground for it to sprout. But that's definitely been one frustrating thing. And in talking with some of my friends is trying to figure out how to show them, I don't know, show them a way without like I can't just force it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I've heard a lot too is people saying like uh we need to, get together in real life. And that's been an interesting of course I agree, but it's interesting because it's like everybody's kind of across the United States, so that sounds good and all, but there's part of me that's like, you know, don't want to lose what's like just begun. Um, and I don't know. I wonder like how to. I think maybe just more events or something like that would help.
Mm-hmm.
Like just being able to meet everybody in real life without, just losing it all. I guess I don't think that would necessarily happen, but
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I thought, yeah, I mean, the way I'm seeing it is like, oh, I mean, I definitely would like the chance to meet more people in real life. Like, that would be great and stuff. Um, but, I mean, I think there's, there's some advantages. You can't live your whole life online. That's not healthy. Um,
hmm
so it's like, like I think about my Bible study that I go to. Those guys are not like really watching what's going on in this corner, as you could say. Um, but everybody you meet's affected by some of this stuff. Like I would say, all of the guys in my Bible study, I would say, are probably watching stuff on YouTube that is not exactly what their pastor would preach on, because like just it's suggested, the algorithm comes up. So everybody's kind of getting a little bit of the experience of like, oh, there's more stuff out there than I knew.
Mhm.
So, uh, so, but yes, so you have to have local friends. That's good. But then the thing that this offers is that you can find people who know about like really, really specific things that you're not going to get a chance to have a conversation with probably just in your normal everyday environment. Um, and so that's pretty cool. But I think maybe uh, yeah, I mean meetups and stuff would be good. Like and figuring out how to have more and smaller ones. So you know it's not all about buying a plane ticket to go across the country, like that's or to Europe or something. But
Yeah.
like I'm sure there's probably like I do know there are a few other people like in Texas within a couple hours, So maybe one of these days it'll work out. Um, but I,
Everything's so spread out there.
yeah, it is. It's a little annoying, but yeah. But yeah, it's funny because like there's so many people that are like on YouTube saying like you need to get offline, you need to go out, be out in the
On
world.
YouTube, yeah.
Yeah,
I
which
done
is yeah, it's true. It's true. You do need to do that, but I think we do need both. And I feel like the thing about like I guess you could say Paul's approach and everybody that's surrounded with him is like because it's all people like genuinely doing their own exploration of ideas and stuff. It's
Mhm.
like a super like how he explained it, it's like a really gentle slope kind of evangelism or whatever, because
Mhm.
there are going to continue to be more and more people spending more and more time online. Like, that's a thing, like when
Yeah.
if stuff develops into more of like a VR world, like Christians can't be like, no, that's bad, we're not going to do it. Like we need to, because that's where the people that need God are going to be. So we
Yeah.
need to be at least, we need to at least have one foot in that world and figure out how to connect it. But I think that's the thing is it's always it's figuring out how to like not have all these little parts of our life being so isolated. So you got
Mhm.
to figure out how to um, connect the different uh, the different parts of your life. So connecting online stuff. So like that's because sometimes in the group I'll be like, oh, I watched a video and somebody was talking about this, and so I kind of explain some of this stuff and try to get some of like these other ideas out there in the real world a little bit more, and hopefully, like when I make my videos, I try not to. I don't. I mean, some of it's just like I feel really pretentious if I use like all the like vervaky words and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out what it means more or less, and I'm going to explain it in my own words. And hopefully a little bit of my goal in that is that like, because I think there's good knowledge and good information in this, but if the weird language makes it hard for people to connect, then I want to connect a little bit more people to it by translating it a little bit.
I mean, like, to be completely honest, to like totally come clean, is like I've never watched the full Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. I've been around this corner for like almost like 3 years. I
Yeah,
don't know what half of these terms mean, and I
yeah,
don't really care to find out what they mean. There's a couple of them that I know that are really helpful, um, but like they're just not useful because nobody knows what I would be saying.
yeah.
Like it's not my own words, so I just don't really. It's interesting, like the Vervaeke side is definitely the least interesting side to me. Like, I don't watch him. I don't keep up with him. Um, he's clearly done a lot for this corner. Like, I'm not saying he's bad or anything. He's extremely intelligent and has some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I guess to my advantage, I've stayed away from that side of things because it's made it easier to communicate some of these ideas where it's like, yeah, the language I use might be a little more wild and it might be a little more, I don't know, it might push buttons a little bit more, but I don't know, it's not so like technical and yeah, it does. It feels a little pretentious, so I don't know really where I was
Well,
going.
yeah. I mean, I think that, but yeah, I think that's the way. Like, we can't like anytime you build a culture, and then it starts to like develop its own vocabulary and stuff. If it doesn't like then you start it starts like building walls around it, like that was some of what the recent discussions have been like. How do you bring like new people into this community? And like, well, the way is that we can't require new people to learn 700 new words. Like, you got to figure out what, if you were here and you watched some of that stuff and it was helpful to you, then use the knowledge and not necessarily the vocabulary to explain it to like new people. Like, because that's even the problem with like church, like, and like Christianese, because like if you go to
Mhm.
church your whole life, you have all these church words for all this stuff, and that causes problems a couple ways. Because like one could be that like we both grew up going to church, but and we know this, we use the same Christianese words,
Yeah.
but if our background wasn't the same, we might have different definitions, and so we think we're talking about the same things, and we're hearing and understanding different stuff.
Well, and one thing is like I've always noticed is people will say certain phrases over and over for their whole life and never actually explain what it means. Like, just an example is like when people say made in the image of God, they say made in the image of God. I've never heard someone actually like explain what that means at all,
Mm-hmm.
or not very well at least. Like
Yeah.
they'll refer back to the phrase and it's like, well, what does that mean? And they just never get past it. It's very, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely one problem, that when we just use those, and especially, I mean, I think that's part of how we learn, because we'll hear stuff in context, and then we maybe we have some sort of a general idea, whether we think about it deeply or not. But like, if you've heard it in context, you can start using it in context without understanding it, and then
Mhm.
you're having like all these conversations with people, and you think like you're accomplishing something, or
Yeah.
and um, so I think that's one problem. So we can't, yeah, the fancy words, like, if it helps, like, I don't know, I guess that's just the thing. It's like, that's our responsibility. If something helps us because we do understand it, we need to then figure out how to explain it to somebody else in a way that's not the same. You know, you can't just use the words to describe the words. You get it,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And it's like, and some people, I think, some this is where I get into arguments with some people, because people say like, but you're not explaining it the right way. And I'll be like, well, maybe not, but like, if it's helping somebody understand something, and then like, I don't know, because I think words kind of tend to gain meaning in some
Mhm.
ways. Like, they can lose meaning, but they can also like gain meaning, and that frustrates people, because then the words are like useless, and we have to make new words. But um, I don't know. That's just part of what I think happens with language. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I think that's part of our job, like, here, is to try to keep keep making more new language to
Yeah.
connect more new people.
Yeah. totally. Um, one reason I did reach out to you was I thought it was really good. Some of your, this is like kind of different subject, but um, some of your, I don't know, like critique of the Orthodox kind of internet sphere,
Yeah.
because it's interesting. Like I really did get into this through Peugeot and stuff like that, and um, I didn't go to an Orthodox church until one of my buddies invited me, who didn't even watch any of this stuff. He just kind of happened to go there, and kind of weird coincidence. Um, and ever since then, well, two things. I went to the church. It was like the most amazing church service I'd ever seen. It was crazy. It was like,
Mhm.
uh, I grew up like in a mega church, so this church had like 200 people, and I thought that was kind of small, or like just kind of like a mid-size, whatever. And everybody else
Yeah.
was saying, "Oh my gosh, it's so big," or whatever. And I was like, "This is like pretty small." But uh, it was like really amazing, and I really fell into it because of the worship aspect of it. And then as that goes on, you could really see like my phone is almost like infected. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'll use it anyways. It's like kind of infected with just orthodox everything,
Mhm.
just because it'll just because I watch a couple, it'll think I want to watch all of it,
Yeah.
and to the point where I moved away and I found another Orthodox church that's much smaller, much smaller. Probably the smallest church that I've been to, and it's fine or whatever. But kind of through some of the discussions of like just kind of this idea of like we're the only real Christians, we're the only way to get saved. They kind of idolize the church in a lot of ways.
Mhm. Yeah.
Again, some people do not, but like
Yeah.
it's funny because I don't know, every piece of scripture is, you know, explained by a holy father or whatever, and all this sort of stuff. I just kind of got disillusioned with it all. But since then, it's like I've really been kind of like, I don't know, doing some soul searching, I guess, of like why did I really like that and why did I not like it? And the number one thing is just the worship is a really big deal because I grew up, in like that background of like the church band, and I never, even as a little kid, I just never liked that music. I just didn't like the music. Um,
Mhm.
I found it horrible. Um, and so, like, I've really been, I don't know, reading a lot of history and stuff like that of America because I want it to feel like that's the thing, is it's the same thing as in Orthodoxy as it is sometimes in this corner where it's like you have to learn like this whole new language. It all feels foreign. It's not yours, It's
Yeah.
not like your one thing. It's funny. Peugeot literally talks about this. It's like once you find Christ, you can rescue Adam and Eve. In that icon of like him pulling them out. It's like you can rescue your earthly father and mother if you're properly oriented. And it's like it feels like going to Orthodoxy is just going to something foreign. It's not, I don't know. It's just not, it doesn't feel like a home, I guess.
Mhm.
And you very much want to have that feeling, I think.
Right.
And I don't know. I just got rubbed the wrong way by some people that are in that world because it's like, oh, I only watch Orthodox, everything. They kind of put themselves in an echo chamber.
Mhm.
And it's like, dude, you were like not even a Christian 4 months ago. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so I think what I've found is that I I definitely like the Anglican Church quite a bit because when I would go to their worship, it was like, oh, this is like what all of our other churches are based on, you know.
Yeah.
Like I could never really go Catholic because I just wasn't raised Catholic. That doesn't feel right
Mhm.
either. Um, I don't know. And like between like either Anglican or I'd rather find like, dude, they get bashed all day long. I don't care, but like a more uh, Pentecostal church that's like real. Like I like that stuff. That's like very, I don't know, alive. I guess. A
Yeah.
lot of those other churches feel just very dead and repetitive and rich. It's almost like ritualism for ritualism's sake. And so just trying to square that has been tough because one thing, the strength of the Catholics and the Orthodox is if you find a real good church, they just worship all day long, like whether or not you're there or not. And I feel like that's something that Protestant churches could do, but I think their band style doesn't allow that because it's exhausting to like play in a band. If you were like really doing worship like day in and day out, how some of the other churches are doing, I just wouldn't really be feasible. And so I don't know. I just do I think that Orthodoxy is a Russian conspiracy right now? Maybe, but probably not
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
No.
Like,
Yeah. A little bit online for sure. I think probably, but
it is suspicious given the timing of like everything else that's going on in the world. Like if you don't see that pattern, it's like, bro, I don't see how you don't see that. But really, it's just like I don't know. It's one of those things where I think Paul even said it's like Orthodoxy is just the hot new girl on the block,
yeah.
and you know, just because she's hot doesn't mean that's meant for you. You know, I don't know. It's kind of been my experience.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's really. I mean, I think it's got to probably change at some point, at least probably in North America. Because like I think the guys from like Lord of Spirits, like they're real like they're cool guys, and like well, first of all, it's like, have you met any Orthodox person like that's not that didn't convert? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
like everybody
Even
grew up
the main
Baptist or
priest at
whatever.
this church that I went to, he was a convert. He
Yeah.
had been a Protestant pastor for like years, almost like 10 years, and he
Yeah.
converted. Like I couldn't even find like you're exactly right.
And I think like you know, I always had a good relationship with my parents, but like my dad was a pastor of a church. It was a little congregational church. It was kind of it wasn't like fancy like like a high liturgical church, but they sang hymns and stuff, and it was just kind of a little old fashioned or whatever. But like then
Mhm.
I spent a long time in a Pentecostal church. I was in the band and doing that like sometimes like 2 and 3 times a week, and it can be exhausting for sure. Um, but like I like there was something about that it was different from like just what my parents taught me that kind of helped me to connect with God more. Like I think that is kind of like a natural thing. But I think with some of these stories that I hear of people, like because everybody's like they're deconverting before they're converting or whatever. Like everybody who's like grown up in sort of an evangelical church, and then they fall away in college, and now they're like um, all excited about orthodoxy or Catholicism or something that's different. But at some point, I think you have to like reconcile with your parents. Like if your parents raised you in a church, no, they weren't perfect. I'm sure their church wasn't perfect, but like you have to kind of look at that and see like that was them to some extent. I'm sure trying to like be good parents and like um, so I think that's the thing that kind of bugs me a lot is that like well there is a commandment to honor your mother and father,
Mhm.
um, and if you like if you totally disdain the version of Christianity that you grew up in, I don't think that's healthy. You know, you can have a reason why you prefer like a new going to a different um, form of church. Like I think that's fine, but I think you just also need to like because that's my perspective. Is I see like there is value in all these different things,
Yeah.
and I think the thing, yeah, it is weird. Like because the Orthodox thing, it's not um, it's not how it was like when Peter and Paul and all them were starting churches. Like it's how it was a few hundred years after that. Like
Yeah.
and so it's stuck in a point in time. It is a long time ago, but it's still just like a particular point in time. It's kind of like the same as like the Amish. Like for whatever reason, it's like the Amish decided they'd be stuck in like the 1700s or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I feel like whenever they were developing that stuff, it was an important uh, it was like an important choice to try to get more people to hear the gospel. And I feel like that it's so unevangelistic now, in that it is a thing where you totally have to come here, learn a language, learn a culture. They're not gonna do anything to accommodate you. You have to do all the change to fit in there. Which, I mean, I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, um, but I think like maybe these like more modern churches that people always talk about how like awful they are. Uh, I think there's something good about the fact that like they're trying different stuff. Like maybe it's not even necessarily about who's coming to the service but you know, if the people who are like in charge are thinking they are kind of trying to do this thing of, you know, actually looking at like where the world is at and
Yeah.
trying to build a bridge, and so like maybe just for their own development, like that's a good thing that they're doing, even though like it means you're gonna like look stupid a lot of times because a lot of the stuff you're trying is dumb and it's not gonna have the appeal that maybe you thought it would. Like all the really really old churches, it's so foreign that like we can't even imagine what it must have been like when they first came out with like whatever their way of um, doing
Yeah.
church. Like
Yeah.
because people might have thought that was weird back then too. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
For
or
sure.
even just being like, why, like, you know, the people get invited to like the first Orthodox church and they're like, where's the animals? Aren't we going to sacrifice something? Like if they're like pagan or whatever, and they'd be like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
we just have like bread and wine. This is lame. I don't want this church is lame. Like I'm all about the blood or whatever. Like I don't know.
Yeah. 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 It's not enough blood. Yeah. It's just interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Um, I think I don't know. Yeah. They bend a little bit too much on scripture. I feel, and again, it's one of those things where if you say that, they'll be like, oh, well, you're just so Protestant. Your religion is the Bible. They'll say that. Like I've heard that a lot, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're using the Bible to criticize something the church does, and it's like, isn't that what it's made for?
No, because the church gave you the Bible. That's what they say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
I mean, yeah,
and one thing that weirded me out was people saying. I know this sounds weird, but like people saying Protestants. Like I had never heard Americans say Protestants because it was just assumed. And I thought that was really, really weird how like all these people would be like, oh, Protestant this, Protestant that. And I was like, I've never even heard people speak this way, except for like, my dad who was like an actual pastor. Like normal people talking about Protestants is just very
yeah,
weird to hear because it's just like that just doesn't happen. You're either Christian or Catholic in America in a lot of ways. And so it's like I found that really weird how it would be like somebody was ex-Mormon or ex-Seventh-day Adventist, and they would be like, "Oh, Protestants this," and it's like, dude, even Protestant churches think you're a cult, bro. Like that's not. You're lumping it all together in this weird way, and they do. They again, it's weird. Like I would hear even priests just bash Protestant churches, and it's just like, okay, is this really just like anti whatever you grew up? Like, weird. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess that's what I say. Like, I didn't want to say like, oh, be overly critical of the Orthodox, because like, because I think everybody kind of that's encountered this, it is exciting, like because it's foreign and there's a lot of beautiful things about it, but
yeah, I've learned like so much.
It's just that it's funny because it's that little exclusivity thing, which really like every church has had at some point. And I was thinking about this too, because like it's not really just the Orthodox that do that. There's also like 700 million like independent little like Baptist Bible churches who they think that their little church of like 30 people is the only people that are really saved in the whole world. So I mean, that is a problem. But I don't know. I think it probably will change eventually. Like just because at some point people are going to have to realize like, oh, my parents that raised me in a non-Orthodox church really are also Christians. So I guess like you can be a Christian and not be Orthodox. Like,
yeah, that's really just kind of my biggest thing. And if I moved back, I would probably still go to that church because I have a community there and I enjoy some of the people. It would just be like, I don't know, be a lot of jousting, I guess, which I don't mind. But yeah, that's the thing too, is like I'm not like totally going against a crusade against it. I just that one thing alone, like I don't know, kind of did bother me. So being back here, I've kind of, I don't know, I've wanted to more return to like roots that are my roots, I guess. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, I always just find like tradition is like the most unsatisfying answer to any question ever. Like, I want to know why. Like, why do we do this? Tradition. Okay, but why did we make that a tradition? Because our ancestors did. Like, like I want to understand how stuff works. So like, so I just don't like tradition as like the reason why.
Yeah.
Because my other thing is saying like, oh well, our oldest tradition is being sinners. Like, that's our oldest tradition. So, and if you want to say like, because it's older, like then paganism and being evil is an older tradition of Christianity. So, I guess that's more valid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
So how did you like get started working in construction? How did that help you out? Good to know.
I quit a job. It was a restaurant job. We didn't like each other. They had like this corporate lady that would come in and we would always get into it. Whatever, I quit. And so I like really needed a job. This one construction place was like hiring. At that time, I was literally, I don't know, I had dropped out of college. I wasn't doing anything with my life. I was just kind of living day to day. And they were hiring. They didn't pay me very much, and I probably didn't deserve much anyways at the time. So I was fine with it. I just needed a job. And it was basically a construction rental equipment place that had like a really big acreage lot that they were constantly building on. So that's kind of what I basically got to use everything, work with everybody, and build with all of this freaking equipment, and you know, get to do all the big transport of like heavy equipment and stuff like that. Anyways, um, yeah, and so I'm like learning all this stuff with like Peugeot and Paul Vanderklay, and I'm like seeing it all, and I'm like, I never had like a deconversion experience. Like I never. There were moments where I was like F God or whatever, and I would like almost hear back like, you know how stupid that is. You know, it's like you're telling God that he doesn't exist. Why would you say that if you really thought that? You know, like one of those things, like where it was like, yeah, maybe I stopped going to church or whatever, but I never stopped believing. And so, anyways, just seeing kind of like everything. I don't know, just seeing the Bible like alive in my own life was really crazy. Uh, and putting all that stuff together, and yeah, just like it got me to really work hard. And then by the time Coronu started, it was like I kind of wanted some more of the artistic stuff that I had put aside for a while, and I kind of brought that work ethic into that world too. And so it's been interesting, like trying to fuse those two worlds together because they do more than you would think. You know, like with filmmaking, I got really into like the lighting, electric, and set design and stuff like that. I did a little bit of that for a theater company before they shut down. Um, and so, yeah, I'm still just trying to figure it out, I guess. But I don't know. I've just seen kind of it's weird. It's like I've seen this like hard pouring concrete world and like this writing world start to like slowly they're coming together in a really crazy way.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, I've made a lot of connections with other artistically minded people, but I have a tough time making connections with people that are more in the construction side of things and want to like build meaning into things. You know, it's all just kind of like follow the floor plan. Uh, everything's drywall, everything's cheap, you know. Especially around here, a lot of people are in this field because it's a job, you know.
Yeah.
And so you can get kind of a rough crowd. Um, I'm in Missouri, by the way. I never said that, but so like a lot of the construction crews are really rough crowds to be around. Um, so yeah, that's really been more of the piece of like, okay, how do I how do I get any sort of meaning going in that realm? It's probably going to be up to me like starting my own business because right now I'm just contracting for a guy, and I think that's kind of the way to go is like if I start my own thing, being able to work in that field. And I don't know, kind of what you were saying where like you train up other guys. I think that I've seen other guys do that really well, and that's really
Yeah.
powerful. That's
Yeah.
like,
That was even like one angle of, I think, I had kind of this plan. I was thinking like, okay, this doesn't necessarily have to be like a super formal thing because like if there's people, because now a lot of people that are successful have started their own companies, but there's been this big thing where like most of the people I'd say in my generation, your generation, like if your dad, this isn't the case for me, um, but like if your dad had worked in construction, he wouldn't be like pushing you to like join the family business. He'd be like, I'm working construction because like that was the opportunity I had, but I want you to go to college. So then like
yeah,
the father to son transmission of like knowledge and in the fields has gone away so
yeah,
much. And I think I think like the company I worked for, when I first got hired, they had a pretty like steep experience level that they wanted for workers. Um, and it's over the past few years, it's just become apparent like it's really hard to find people that are
It
already experienced.
it's
So
so tough.
you
Yeah,
have to take people who are willing to learn instead.
yeah,
And some of that's really great because you can they don't have bad habits they have to unlearn. They're not doing it like because there's all sorts of sloppy hack ways of doing stuff, and no, we want to show you how to do it the right way. um,
mhm,
and knowing when it's appropriate to take a shortcut and when it's necessary to do it the hard way, like all that
yeah,
kind of stuff. um, and so I was even thinking like, okay, there's lots of like Christian businessmen who work in these trades and stuff, and
mhm,
they probably are coming up to ages where they want to retire. If they don't have somebody to work for them, like they should be able to like they had if you're a Christian and you've been successful in business, you do have like knowledge and wisdom. If they may not have really like thought about it in those terms, but
yeah,
like they have valuable information that they can pass on to young men. So maybe like figuring out a way to get people interested in that, like to take apprentices and not just teach them how to do the job, but like how to be a man of God and how to like be a provider for a family and being responsible with your finances and all that stuff. Like,
yeah,
um, because
yeah.
even like secular people are talking about what a need it is, especially like in construction.
Mhm,
Like Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy, like
mhm,
he's doing all this like stuff because it's like, oh, all like we still want people to build buildings in America, but especially like the skilled trades like welding and some of the other stuff that's like more difficult. It's like nobody in America knows how to do this. We have to go get somebody from another country, and they're making good money,
mhm.
but um, like we need to get people like more interested in those things again. And I think people like young guys are starting to see that like there's not a lot of hope in some of the paths that keep being like because I knew like there's no point in me getting a degree. What good is this degree going to do for me? Like part of it was like I was like I want to work for a church, and so I started working for a church before I like finished
Mhm.
all of getting a degree from Bible college. So I was like, well, I already have the job, so why do it probably would have been good for me to get a degree, but um but like I think a lot of people are starting to see ahead of time, like, oh, these people are just super in debt and they can't find a job, or if they find a job, they don't like their job, so why bother? Like, I'd rather just stay home and play video games, like.
The first glimpse, and I mean this, like the first glimpse of like the future. I swear, I saw it. It was this kid who was a little bit younger than me at the time. Well, still is, but at the time he was a little bit younger. He was like fresh out of high school or whatever. He grew up very wealthy, and his dad had a really good job. Like moved across the world. He's been to all sorts of places. Um, so he had a really good setup in life. And I'm like, what are you doing here, working here, uh, at this like construction rental place? Um, and he was like, well, my dad didn't want me to go to college. He wanted me to go to welding school. And so that's kind of what I meant doing. And he did really good in welding school. And, they were going to, obviously, they're helping him out. They're pretty well off or whatever. But that was like the coolest thing. I tried to tell him, like, I was like, bro, like, as a young man getting into that sort of stuff, like, that's a huge deal, like, what you're doing. Um, I just tried to encourage him, I guess, is all
Mhm.
I really wanted to do because I was just like, that's the coolest thing ever. Because yeah, it's kind of this thing where it's a two-way street, but there is like this, oh, you have to have a lot of experience, And it's like, well, I need experience. And it's like, well, and so it's kind of like this, it's dying, it's killing itself in a way. And at the same time, the older guys are like pointing the finger at the kids, being like, kids these days, kids these days. And it's like, it is, there is a piece of that too. Like there is a piece of like kids these days are in a pretty rough condition. And so just like, I don't know, encouraging the young men to get into that is just really cool to see. Um, and calling them young men, like people, I am so tired of adults pointing at 18-year-olds and being like, "You're just a kid." It's like he can he can get drafted, he will get tried as an adult. He is a man. Like people need to realize that you are not young when you're 30. You know,
Yeah.
that's not how it goes. And I don't know. I don't really know where I was going with this.
Yeah. Well, no, I think, yeah, yeah, Paul put out a video the other day, really made it clear, like, oh yeah, this is the thing, like this is where it's going. And it's, yeah, because it's like finding not just a job but a career, like,
Yeah.
is it's hard, or it's, you know, we're not doing a good job of like connecting the needs with like the people, and then also like dating and stuff. It's like I don't know how you're doing with that, but like honestly, like now I look back
That
like,
has to be a
oh,
whole
it's,
other subject. Oh my
well,
god.
I'm like, it's a miracle that I got married. Like I realize that now, like because I was almost 30 when I got married, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have my own house. I didn't have any of this stuff. Fortunately, you know, my wife also worked at a church, uh, making no money, and she she had a different priority of values.
Yeah.
But like, if I was just trying to like go out there on the open market or whatever, like it's, yeah, it's tough. So yeah, and that's probably a harder problem to solve, really. But I think getting guys to have like a career and stuff that they can feel proud of, and and um, and treating it as the important thing that it is too. Like it's not just a job. It's not just like a working class, lower class thing. Like this is an important thing that you're doing. Like you know, because buildings last longer than apps do, still.
Yep.
You know, for the most part. So yeah, so like treating that with like the respect too. I mean, that's the thing. Like for all the like beauty and majesty of like Catholicism and the Orthodoxy and stuff, the thing that to me is so compelling about, I won't say Protestant, but I would say like Reformed theology, the Reformation. What it did was it made all the normal stuff of life spiritual and important, and that's like, there's no America without Protestants. Like that just wouldn't exist. Like so, yeah, it's and I think we just have lost that as like an evangelical church or whatever. Because I think there's still a lot of great people in regular churches, mega churches, and stuff like that. They're just a little unaware of like where the important stuff is happening. So
they definitely have their walls too.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I think and this is where I think the strength of that model is that if they start to become aware of like, here's where the needs are, they don't have, well, we've always done it this way. Like they're designed to like change and adapt and go figure out how to reach the people that need to be reached where they're at. So
Yeah. One thing that I always try to use when it comes to that, like, whole, I don't know, where people are like, oh, this is the only way. I think people don't realize that it's like God's body, Christ's body. And the way I see it is like the two statues. The example that I've tried to use to some of the ortho bros is like the two statues of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, where it's like the church is supposed to be, there is a golden head. You could say that's like maybe orthodoxy or something. And you have like the silver torso of Catholicism, the bronze, the iron and clay. And what I feel like a lot of any denomination, whether it's the Baptists, the Catholics, whatever, their big problem is like they want to make the golden statue where it's like all solid gold. And it's like, as soon as you do that, as the story goes, it'll get smashed by the uncut stone, And so, I don't know.
Well, I like that reminds me of something. So I thought about this idea that like this would be something I would make a video about or whatever, because I was thinking about this thing, and about how like, as I see it, it's like there's nothing wrong with like the Orthodox Church's way of doing things. It's only the exclusivity and this idea of like what is unity and mix, and we mistake unity for uniformity. Like we see uniformity, and that's what we think unity is. But like everywhere else that we look, like in creation, there's so much diversity, and there's adaptation, and there's change, and it all works together. Like everything works together, but it's like super diverse. And I was actually thinking about this like in regards to like plants and stuff, because you can there's like a couple ways you could like you could make more trees. Like you can wait for the seeds and plant the seeds and they'll grow new trees, or you can grow a tree from like a cutting. Like you cut a branch off and you can plant it and it'll grow roots. But every time you make a tree from a cutting, it's the same, like genetically. It's whereas as fruit trees like grow, they cross pollinate, and you get like hybrid fruits and stuff, and they're all different. So like the seed from one tree won't produce the exact same fruit as the fruit that it came from. So like if you have an apple or something, an apple that tastes good, the seeds won't make the same tree. They'll make some different tree. It might taste good, it might taste horrible. I don't know. But and so they say like, oh well, that's the way God made it. So but the advantage is that like when diseases and stuff come, if your tree is like a monoculture, if it's all like clones basically, and there's some sort of parasite that is effective against that type of tree, it wipes them all out. They're all gone. Whereas if you have this diversity and all these hybrids, that pest will kill some of them, but others won't be affected at all. And so it's actually like that's like what happened with bananas. Like apparently like our grandparents ate a totally different type of banana, and it was super popular, and then they all died. So they were better. I guess they had better bananas.
That's really
so I mean, so I think that's the thing. It's like, and I think it's kind of, and I do think it's really cool the way the Orthodox have preserved their history. That's like, as I see it, like that's their strength. They shouldn't change that. They just should also be like, also there's these other Christians.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the Peugeot's thing about the right hand and left hand. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me. I'm not sure what he thinks about that, but it's like the Orthodox clearly are that right hand. Protestants are that left hand. They can still be the same body. Like,
Yeah.
and that's totally fine. Because you even see that he talks about the left hand being related to Paul. It's like, who do the Protestants like the most? Paul, So I don't know. It's interesting. Very interesting. You're good at allegories. You're really good at like allegories and stuff like that.
Thank you.
It's been impressive.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that comes from like working with my hands and then connecting all this stuff, and so yeah, that's God's got lessons in everything. That's the way I see it.
Definitely.
Well, I should probably go do more work. So
yeah, I need to get back to working. So totally fair. It was cool to meet you and talk to you.
yeah,
I've got a lot of family down in Texas, by the way. They're all in like Lubbock and Abilene, so like the exact opposite ends.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe if there's ever a Texas event, I would totally be down to go there because I need to see them anyways.
Yeah. There is I always forget to like pay attention to these things, but there is like a Texas Discord server that like branched off from the other one. So
From Bridges of Meaning?
yeah, because like somebody
Oh,
was trying to like get a meetup going or whatever. So,
interesting.
but yeah, but it's good. It's good to like just check in on those things every once in a while. See, I'll try. I'm so bad at organizing things, but I do want. Maybe I'll have to try to like put the idea in somebody else's head. But I do feel like I don't know. There's a lot of people here. It's pretty central, sort of. Somewhere in Texas to have like a meeting or something. So maybe we could get PVK to come out here if we could. If we build it, he will come. If we plan it. So
Totally.
all right.
Yeah, and you can post this or whatever. I don't know what your plan is. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just cut out the part where I get a phone call in the middle of the conversation. So,
Sure.
all right. Awesome.
All right,
Good
man.
talking to you. See you.
All right. Bye.